Okay, you're live now.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the Monday, November 16th meeting of the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board. Calling this meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. Roll call.
Okay. Susan Sullivan. I don't see Walt Meskey.
Present.
Kaylin Pike.
Present.
David Lopez. Don't see
pictures on there.
Nadine Steckline.
Present.
Donald Pons. Donald, oh, he's here. I didn't hear him, but I see him. Ruben Hernandez. I don't see, but I do see that Suzanne Sullivan has joined us. So it looks like
roll call. So Ruben, can you hear us? Are you present with us today? Oh yeah, okay.
There you are.
I can see.
So Ruben is present. So,
Hello.
So the only person we're missing, I believe, is David Lopez. So we do definitely have a quorum. You can continue.
Hey, thank you, Lisa. The next, oh, the consent agenda, right? So we need an approval for the consent agenda that was on our, sent to us and also located on the docs. I forget what it's called. Board docs. Can I get, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda today? Is there somebody who would like to motion to approve it?
I motion to approve the consent agenda. This is Kaylin.
Kaylin motions. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. This is Walt Meskey.
Walt seconds it. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Was that okay, Lisa? The verbal aye or nay, or do you need the participant hands?
Nope, that works fine.
Okay, perfect. The minutes were also sent to us. So those were from our last meeting, which took place August 17th, 2020. I like to thank Lisa for them because they were very detailed in terms of what we spoke about. Do I have a motion? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
The consent agenda motion covers the agenda and the minutes.
It does. Perfect. Okay. So that's all in one swoop, basically. Great. Our next item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. So I will hand it over to Kaylin Pike.
Hello. So I believe that land acknowledgements are super important. The purpose of them, for those of you who are unaware, is to truly just acknowledge the native land of which we are on. Specifically in our area, we actually have a lot of native tribes that have worked hard to keep this land for us, and we are using it, and we need to, I think, be respectful of this sacred land of theirs. And so I will read to you the proposed land acknowledgement. If you have any questions or if you want to adjust anything, we can talk about that in just a minute. It says, we, which would be like the people on this board, we want to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, including the Cayuse, Walla Walla, and Umatilla people. Their stewardship of the land over generations is based on their belief that water was created first, life and land were created next. Land promised to take care of all life, and all life promised to take care of all land. I attest, affirm, and acknowledge our responsibility to care for the land, natural resources, and all people benefiting from their hard work. We come together today in the spirit of honoring their legacy. So that's the land acknowledgement. I definitely borrowed it from someone else with permission and made some minor tweaks and adjustments. But I think it would be really important to read it at the beginning of all of our meetings.
Thank you so much, Kaylin, for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Do you want to note that David Lopez has joined us?
Okay, we have everybody here. Great. Thank you. So thanks again for the acknowledgement of the land that we sit on here today, that we are working to better our community. It's not an easy feat, and we take that job seriously. I speak on behalf of myself. The next action item that so do we have to just kind of, do we approve the acknowledgement? Should I get a motion to approve it, or can we?
Yes, if you want to do this at each meeting, it should be a motion to approve it.
Got it. And then what is the feature we want to use for the A's and the nays? Is verbal best, or is I don't remember where the raise hand feature is.
Yeah. Someone can verbally make the motion. I have a suggested motion on the screen.
Oh,
you
gotcha.
don't have to stick with that, but yeah, someone can verbally do it, and then someone verbally second, and then you take the vote.
Okay, kind of like I did a little bit before.
Yes.
Okay, so would anybody like to make a motion? And Kaylin can also make the motion if she likes, correct?
I
Correct.
motion to accept the land acknowledgement and make the statement at the beginning of each board meeting.
Perfect. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
David, okay, David Lopez seconds that. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstaining?
Mr. Pons does have his hand up. Is that for a question, or was that for the vote?
Oh, you were voting in favor, is that right? Okay. Sounds like your sound's not working. Your microphone. We can't hear anything you're saying. But I think that's what Donald said. Yeah, okay, he said it was for the affirmative for the aye. So with that, the motion passes for us to read the land acknowledgement and to, at the beginning of our meetings, to acknowledge the land that we are here serving today. Okay, next on our agenda is the College Place pre-charging diversion program with Ms. Colwell. Ms. Colwell, can you take us away with that?
Sure. I know it was a lot of information that I threw at you guys. This is a very complex issue, our criminal justice system. But the ask that I have for you is way dug down there in page 9. And basically is if your group or one member of your group or more is interested in helping me develop this program, we're developing it kind of ground up. But I do have other programs from other jurisdictions that I we can use to model on. So we're not necessarily recreating the wheel, but I think I want this something that's tailored to our community. Also, if anyone has any questions about the information that I provided, I'd be happy to answer at this time.
Would you be able to provide just a quick synopsis or
Sure.
summary?
Sure. So for those of you who didn't have time to go through the 9 pages that I sent you in my ask, basically, in summation, a lot of our criminal cases that are charged in the court are resolved with a dismissal of the charges. And that's based on certain conditions. The defendant stays out of trouble, pays restitution, does community service, things like that. What I'd like to do is have the option for our law enforcement officers, rather than charging a crime, to divert that matter to me and basically get people into a program where they would have to do certain things. And if they do, then the case is never charged. I believe I have Chief Tamaris's support in this. And I think that about sums it up. Unless anyone has any questions, concerns. I'm really looking for kind of a win-win. Sorry.
Any questions from members of the board? Feel free to raise your hand or unmute. Kaylin.
Thank you. I do have a question. What would the role of those board participants be in this? Are it to do what?
What I would like, I've been in the criminal justice system for 16 years now. And when I find that when I'm involved in something over and over again, I kind of get blinders on as to what I'm doing. I want a perspective that includes young, old, diverse backgrounds, just so I'm serving the city and the program serving the city to the best of the public. So it would be bouncing off ideas off of you guys. Hopefully you can assist me in raising any issues that you see. I'll give you an example. I'll try to be quick. Probably 10 to 15 years ago, Washington State tried to figure out why we had such a disproportionate number of Black juveniles in juvie jail, for lack of a better word, in detention. And what they found is one of the screening processes that to screen people whether those juveniles were going to go into custody or not was, do you have a safe place to go? Do you have a home? And unfortunately, there's a disproportionate number of Black people, Black kids who didn't have a safe place to go. And so that was part of the reason. And it seems very simple, but it took a long time to figure that out. And since that time, that's been corrected. And now our juvenile justice in Washington State, as far as Caucasian and Black, is proportionate to our population. So that would be an example. Does that make sense?
Anybody else have any questions?
I do. I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I'm just wondering what your position is.
Oh, Ms. Colwell, can you tell what your position is?
Oh, sorry about that. I think that everyone knows who I am. I'm the city prosecutor. So I prosecute the misdemeanors that happen in College Place.
So if you're looking for volunteers, just for sounding board or?
Yep, sounding board. I've developed a survey that I sent out to the police officers, but I'd like to do a survey to extend to you guys. Yeah, I will say, I hope it won't take up too much of your time, but I'd really like someone that's not in the criminal justice system to be part of the program.
Well, that wouldn't be me then, because I work at 10.
Well, I still want your input.
Okay.
And by all means, if you guys are too busy, don't worry about it. I can come back and provide updates on the program, and it's okay if one of you doesn't want to get involved. I can just keep letting you know what's going on.
Well,
I
if
would-
no one else does, then let me know. I'll help you out.
Is there anybody who's interested in volunteering? Kaylin, awesome. Yay. Would that be a good start for us right now? To have at least one person from this board to serve in that capacity? Okay. Thank you. And so then, well, this is a question for Ms. Colwell. Does Kaylin kind of report back to the board, or or are they like a sounding board and maybe once in a while report?
Yes, and it's really a fluid process right now. So I'm not going to promise anything, but we'll do our best to have her report on what we're doing, and I can do that as well.
Perfect.
I don't want to take up all your guys' time, but I think you're a valuable input in this. And so Lisa might be able to answer this question. I think if we just, if someone nominates or Kaylin volunteers, ask if there's anyone else that wants to do it. And if not, I think take a vote on it. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes, that would be good. The only caveat is that we not have more than 3.
Right.
So as long as we have 3 or less, then we're good to go, and we'll just add a report at each of our agendas for reporting on the status of this. It would basically be like a subcommittee.
Perfect. Okay. Is there anyone else interested in being part of this pre-charging diversion program sounding board? Any of the board members?
I'd be interested. I have no experience, but it sounds like that's the requirement. So if she's willing to take me, I'm interested.
Okay. David, anybody else?
I'm also interested.
Donald, okay.
Yeah.
So Lisa, you mentioned 3 or less, right?
Yes, so that would, unless we have others and we want to do a vote, but as long as everybody on the board is satisfied with those 3 members, then they would become the subcommittee.
Perfect. Do we need a motion for those 3?
A motion to create that subcommittee of those 3 individuals and have them work with Ms. Colwell and report back at our quarterly meetings.
I move that, this is Walmeski, I move that the 3 people that have volunteered would be accepted as a committee.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
I second that. I second that.
Ruben seconds. All those in favor of having the committee with the 3 folks who volunteered, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay, sounded like the motion passed. So we will have that on the doc for our next report, which is really exciting, I think.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I've had 3 people interested in something I'm doing in a long time.
I will get their contact information to you, Ree.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so next on the agenda is kind of a big one. Is something that at our last meeting, I know Suzanne wasn't able to be with us, but we did a little bit of brainstorming about what this I'm gonna say council and committee, the advisory board is kind of tasked with, and we just kind of put a bunch of ideas out there. And I think before you on the agenda is a couple of the things that were listed from last time for those folks who remember. I guess today I wanted to utilize this for us to get more clarity around what kinds of things are we tasked for. So when you hear Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board, and we have, you know, Chief Tamar is here with us, we have the prosecutor here with us, we have human resources here with us, what exactly, like when the city created this charter, did they mean, and how can we accomplish and move forward with our task or our charge? So that's a big thing. I would, if possible, kind of have, I didn't tell Mike Rizzatello or anything, I didn't give you a heads up, but if possible, if there's any way that you can kind of reiterate that or kind of bring us to a space where we're able to clarify that piece.
Okay, I can best explain what we were aiming for, really what was in the enabling code for this advisory board. So if you go in our municipal code for chapter 2.60, it lists like why it was created, as well as some of the powers and duties, and city council came up with this through a lot of discussion through workshops and so forth. So for really section 260.20 adds a lot of it. So it's achieving the College Place community's vision of being a welcoming city that respects all by encouraging equality, fairness, cooperation, tolerance, and respect among and by all persons who come in contact with the city of College Place, including residents, visitors, employers, employees. A couple of years ago, the city council passed like a resolution called a welcoming city resolution. So everyone just felt welcomed and embraced in the community. City of Moscow, Idaho has a similar one. Also recommending effective strategies for public engagement, removing barriers and increasing inclusion and access to city services for the public. Recommending opportunities for community partnerships as a strategy to better understand and address equity impacts throughout the city. Facilitating the building relationships with underserved, underrepresented, and marginalized communities, and serving as trusted messengers to the community at large. Advise the city on strategies as strengthening human rights, values, and principles, and then perform such other duties as the mayor and or city council may direct. And a lot of this came from successful advisory boards in this vein that exist in Beaverton, Oregon, which is also where I worked in the past. So
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you so much. I just wanted to kind of bring us back to, you know, what exactly is our charge, and are these? It's very encompassing, right? It's not like very specific like a lot of our other boards, and so I really appreciate the city. You know, when I have questions about things, you all answer me really quick, Lisa and Mr. Rizzatello. I appreciate that. I wanted to make sure that the folks on the board understood that as well. So that's kind of what I wanted to do today, is see if anybody on the board has any questions in terms of our charge, or any concerns or anything like that that I'd like to bring forward today. Okay, I think that was helpful. That was a helpful exercise for myself, just to kind of bring us back to what our focus needs to be. And I don't know if our purpose and goals need an action right now. I feel like we're still at the stage where we're forming as a group and getting to know what our job is. So unless anybody else has any ideas in terms of what we should move forward on, I think having the pre-charging diversion program is a great start, and having that subcommittee. And then we can kind of figure out from there what we want to establish in the future.
This is Kaylin Pike. I think that we should talk about these a little bit more. Like as I look at the list, there are a couple of things that jump out to me that I'm like, ooh, I would really like to be involved in that thing. And I think that for other people, there might be other things that jump out to them that are kind of their brainchild. And so I think it could be valuable to see where our interest lies on this list that we have. Because I know that Mr. Meskey talked about supporting the police department. That was a really big reason why he wanted to be involved in this. Whereas I love the idea of training for city staff. And so I think that if we could get a list kind of going of who is interested in what, then, you know, because we only meet 4 times a year, I think it would be beneficial to kind of start that ball rolling so that we can start to look at some meaningful change in our community.
I appreciate that. I really do. I think that that's something that I really have kind of been contemplating, and I needed someone to kind of speak up. So I appreciate that, Kaylin. So these are just a couple of brainstorming sessions. I'm trying to think what is feasible, or if, you know, what is the need of the city staff and right now in terms of all of these things we have on this list, because we can't do all of them. It's just not feasible. But when or how can we kind of prioritize these, and who do we ask for that prioritization?
Oh, I think the community safety and support of the College Place Police Department could go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I would definitely be interested in that area.
Okay. And that is Suzanne?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no problem. It's because I have to scroll through a little bit of screens. I think you're right. I think community safety and support of College Place Police Department could be one topic. And Suzanne is interested in that. And then anybody else have any comments on what they're interested in this list?
This is Kaylin. I think that hiring practices and trainings for staff can go hand in hand, and I would love to be part of that.
Kaylin, all right.
Thanks, Kaylin. I made a note of that.
Okay. Other folks, are you interested in anything on this list or something separate and it could be the same as somebody else?
This is David. I'm interested in the community-wide training. I think that along with like creating a self-assessment or, you know, some of the other things that have been talked about will be important as they come out.
Yeah, and I can see those together as kind of initiatives towards the community, right? Or community type of, okay. So creating a self-assessment and then community-wide trainings.
This is Ruben. I'm interested in the bilingual English-Spanish forms and signs, and also the hiring practices.
Hiring practices, perfect. Let's see. If I could have Walt or Donald chime in to see if any of these are of interest to you.
You know, I have not had to use a computer or Zoom to do a committee meeting. All my life I've been on hundreds of committees, but this is I retired in '91, and that's been 29 years ago. And I just haven't had the opportunity to use electronic communications. And so I'm a little hesitant to commit myself to something that I can't do a good job on. So as has been mentioned though, I very strongly recommend and support the police department. And I think we're very fortunate to have Mr. Chief Tamaris as our chief. And I think he could be, he should give us some advice on what the most highest priority items are and how, where he wants help. And I would be happy to work on something like that.
That sounds great. I will, there's a support, the College Place Police Department, and I will put your name next to that, Walt. So if there's any way we can get involved with that, that we can make note of that. And then Donald, are you able to?
Yes, I'm interested in the community-wide training as well, along with David, in the creating of a self-assessment for our city. And what does that look like? How do we move forward with some goals and really get some quality training out to our community?
Yeah, that looks great. It looks like almost 2 people per topic, which is always good. It's always good to have 2 eyes or 2 heads, as they say, better than one. I think this is a great start. I think that we can look into creating goals within that. So like in terms of the hiring practices and trainings for staff, that would probably be something you'd work with someone who's on here. Who is that from Human Resources?
Me, Sean.
Sean, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that would be kind of like a Sean, working with Sean in terms of that. So something Kaylin and Ruben can work on, and then the community safety and support of the CPPD would be with Chief Tomaris, I think. And the community-wide one, would that be something to work with Carolyn Holm? Mike, or who do you think would be the best?
Yeah, that could be between myself and Caroline. We
Okay.
both handle community-wide initiatives.
Yep, that's what I was thinking. Mike and Carolyn Holm. Should we make any kind of action?
I have one more thought.
Okay.
So there's 2 things that 3 things that weren't really claimed because they're more of mentalities. And the first one, which is really the one I wanted to bring up, is defining what diversity and inclusion means specifically. And I think that it'd be really valuable for all of us to kind of think about that. And maybe, like, I'm a teacher, so I'm all about homework. Not really, but I think our homework could be for each of us to come up with what that definition is. And maybe we can send that to Lisa, and you can kind of compile a list of what everyone said. And that's something that maybe we can have real definitions for next meeting.
I think that's an excellent idea.
I can
really
certainly do that.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, defining what diversity and inclusion means is actually probably the starting point for a board that is named diversity and inclusion. So that's an excellent idea. The other ones, you're right, are like conceptual. So being an example or lead by example, that was kind of us mentioning that us as a board need to lead the community and show them, you know, in terms of inclusivity, when we create flyers or when we create, when we're able to meet, we do so in an inclusive way, right? So we make sure that folks of all areas on knowledge and are able to attend and to participate as best as they can. So yeah, I love that. And Lisa said that she would put that on the docket, so that's great. Oops, that was a minute. Yeah, I don't think we need an action on that, but Lisa, you can chime in. I just think that, could it be more of a fluid type thing or do you need something kind of?
Nope, it can be fluid.
Perfect. I'm thinking that would be the best for right now, to see if that works, and then we can move forward and reassess in the future.
Yeah, if something bigger comes out of it, like a specific task or some big goal that you want to devote time and working on, then that would be where you would form a subcommittee and really work towards something specific.
Gotcha. That
So
makes sense.
it seems like the things that we paired up, there's a city staff member that kind of is on that train. City staff members, are you going to reach out to us, or do you want us to reach out to you? What works best for you?
I will provide each of those city staff members with the contact information for those people who are interested in that item.
Perfect. So you can expect to get some form of contact or follow-up with that city administrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
We can move on. Oh, yes, Ruben?
That's something I wanna work closely with support of College Place PD. So anything you need, Chief, reaching out to Latino community, anything, translation, anything, please reach out to me. So I'd like to be added to that as well.
Okay. And I know that one of the common things that we're going to see today is kind of the administrative report from Chief Tamaris, and so I can expect that to be a common occurrence or an update to the general committee. And I really think that all voices and all of us here will be able to have add some voice to whatever Chief Tamaris kind of asked for us, or even if it's us kind of asking questions. So
Yep.
yeah.
I also want to comment that as long as we're working within these meetings, these quarterly meetings, everybody can have input. But as far as working with an individual staff member outside of these meetings, we can't have more than 3 members of the committee working with an individual staff member. So, so that we're not violating the open public meetings laws.
Correct. So not more than 3 of the committee members working with that staff at the same time, and or that counts emails. It does count emails. I remember you mentioned that.
Yes, yes. And it counts forwarding emails too. So it's basically whoever would be working with that staff member, you would be working with that staff member. And then at the next quarterly meeting, you would report on that, and then whole board discussion could happen at that time.
That makes sense. Thank you for that clarification. Are there any questions or comments about the purpose and goals that we just discussed? Okay, I don't see any. We can move forward with administrative report items. The first one we have is the Walla Walla Valley Housing Needs Assessment. Mr. Ricard.
Hi, thank you. So I just to introduce myself, I'm the Community Development Director for the City of College Place, and we're regionally, we have been working with the City of Walla Walla, Dayton, Waitsburg, and the county to do a regional housing action plan. And part of that is to do a housing needs assessment for the region, Walla Walla region. That has never been done before, to our knowledge, for the region. So this is a really interesting document. So I encourage you to take some time to read through it entirely. And it's totally manageable too. It's only 26 pages or 21 pages or so. So to kind of step back, we've, as a planner, and if you're familiar with the Growth Management Act, every 10 or so years, we update our comprehensive plans, and we need to look at the future growth, projected growth. We try to plan out 20 years and determine how much new land we need for our for projected growths. And our urban growth boundaries have been getting tighter and tighter over the years. So we don't necessarily have enough room to expand into those areas. And I think from a planning standpoint, it's making affordability an issue for us for whether it's a single family home or apartments. So we'll just kind of get into this. Lisa, if you could pull up the document, I'll just kind of go through and hit some highlights. So in terms of demographic trends, our annual growth rate for College Place, it's less than 1% annually. It's 0.9. It is the fastest in the region of all of the cities. But compared to the state average, which is 1.33, we're still not growing as fast as some of the other areas. The Tri-Cities area in comparison is, I think they're growing at about 3%. They're the highest growing in the state of Washington. So the fastest growing. So, you know, I kind of have to laugh sometimes when people, you know, are concerned about us. We're just growing so fast, and we're not. You know, it's less than the state average. For population by generation, on the next slide, if you would, Lisa. I was surprised to see how young 35% of our population falls into that Gen Z category. And I'm not sure, and I'm going to follow up on this, and maybe Mike can relay it back to you when I find out the answer, but I'm wondering if some of that isn't accounting for the 3 colleges that we have in the area, because I do know that when I report to the state on our populations annually, I do capture the census in the dormitories. So it's possible that's maybe why we see an uptick in that Gen Z. And I wasn't surprised at all to see the 8% for the silent generation. So that's the generation born during either the Great Depression or the last half of the World War II. And of course, the boomer generation. We have a lot of assisted living facilities. We've got a great hospital. We had 2 great hospitals. And so that tends to draw a retiring community. And we've got a pretty mild climate. So moving to the next slide, the next page, employment trends. While we have seen apparently an uptick in jobs in the last few years, we've also lost a lot of jobs in the trades, which tend to be higher paying jobs. So there is some concern that, for one, we're well below the state average on our income levels. The state average is, I think, around 70,000, and we're at 56. So we're $13,500 less than the state average, which is concerning because, as you'll see later on, we're seeing our housing prices increase pretty dramatically. So it's a little concerning. Although we're picking up some jobs in certain sectors, we're also seeing a loss in some of the other sectors that pay a little better, the industry and trades. So that's something. I'm not a statistician, so I don't ask me any questions about some of these graphs, but it's just interesting to see the shift, and it's concerning to see our housing prices increase and our income levels are much lower than what the state average is. Then housing inventory. We are primarily, like 65% of our community is single family homes. And, you know, if you've been in the market lately or just, you know, curious and go to an open house, a lot of the newer stuff that is hitting the market, it's single family, and it's, you know, 3-bedroom, 2-bath plus maybe even more, which is not necessarily hitting the target for the demographic that's out there. If we're seeing more younger people hitting the market, more of those people on the market tend to be renters. So what we're seeing is people being forced into more expensive housing than they need. So they may, if they're looking for a 1-bedroom apartment, but that's all that's out there is a 2-bedroom apartment. They're either, if they're fortunate enough, they'll pay extra for that unit, even though they don't need the space, or they might, if they can't afford the space, they'll find a roommate to offset that increased cost. So some other interesting things about the housing inventory. Yeah, like I said, for College Place, we're 59% is single family detached. And I can attest to that in terms of when I look back over the years, the number of single family permits that we issue through the building department versus the apartments. Although I will say we do have quite a few duplexes and townhomes in the community, higher than the rest of the other cities at 26%. I mean, Walla Walla is the closest. Well, actually, Walla Walla and Dayton are similar. They're at 11%. But then we fall way short on the multifamily. We are starting to add more units. I have some permits that are ready to be issued for an 180 unit apartment complex on Whitman. We're working on doing a plan review right now on a 40 unit apartment complex on Spitzenberg. And then we have some other things on College Avenue that have come online in the last few years, but we're still fall short of providing a diverse enough housing inventory for all of our markets. Then page 6, just kind of, you can just see that big yellow right there on that upper slide, or even on the second graph there, the yellow there. Those are housing units that we're adding, the single family units, and that's been the primary supply that we've been providing, and there's a change in demographic, and we need to catch up on that. If page 7, tenancy and vacancy levels. The other thing that we found, and this kind of just backs up the need for more apartments or even single family homes that are for rent. We have a 3% vacancy rate, which is in the region, which is way lower than the state average. I'm not sure if I can't remember what the state average is. I'm sure it's in here somewhere, but I mean, a 3% vacancy rate is great if you're in the rental, like if you're a landlord, but that means that you can increase the cost of your rental units, and you're always going to have a steady supply of renters. So great market to be a landlord, bad market to be a renter. You can see, 31% of our market is, what am I looking at here? So 70% of our market is owner rented, and 31% of our market in College Places are renters, and there just isn't the supply.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry. You said that we're at 3%, which is great for landlords, not great for rentees. What would you say is the percentage that would be good and profitable for both groups of people?
I don't know I don't have that number. That's a good question. I think that's will be something hopefully that we'll figure out as this housing study completes. It's, as we work through that process. But I'm gonna make a note about that and see if we can make sure that is answered.
I can just chime in on what other areas are. So like around the Pullman area, a healthy rate is usually between 6 and 7%. So we'll see if this area trends along that line. I just know when I was city manager in Colfax, it was between 6 and 7 that was healthy.
Thanks, Mike. That's great. And then when you jump to slide 8, page 8, home prices and rents have just shot up over the years. Just in the last 8 years, just the median house, the cost of a home has jumped $93,000. And that's a huge increase. And that's most people, I know, you know, my wife and I bought in this valley in 2004, and I couldn't afford to buy my house today if it were on the market. It's just, it's crazy. I'd skip again to page 10 just to kind of keep this brief, because I know we're probably running out of time here. Housing attainability. So this is where we look at how our residents and are they cost burdened. When you factor in how much you have to pay for you know, your utilities, all of your other household needs, transportation, so on and so forth. And they say if you pay over 30% of your gross income, then you're considered cost burdened. And we're approaching that. 20% of our residents, I mean, we have residents that are cost burdened, 20% of them, in fact. And I mean, I would think that number is too high. So an interesting fact there. Another measure of economic hardship, if you go to slide 12, it's a relatively new tool. They call it the ALICE, and it's assessed, limited, income constrained, and employed. So this takes into account the total cost of household essentials, and it's similar to the cost burden that I was talking about recently. 42% of our households in Wallowa County are either in poverty or in the ALICE category, which is well above the state average at 33%. So, and that's just going to continue to get worse. I think if we jump to kind of the page 19, actually right before that is on page 18 is the reconciliation of housing needs and land supply. And so this is kind of where I was when I first started talking about the Growth Management Act. And what planners do is take a look at the land that's available, that's been undeveloped within the existing city limits. And then you have areas outside of the city, which we call urban growth areas. And we take a look at those undeveloped lands. And we factor in some market factors and likelihood of development happening in these areas. And it's anything from availability of utilities to the property owners wanting to actually redevelop. And the last time we went through this was 2018, 2019, and the county's consultants, the watershed company, assumed that, for instance, in College Place, 43% of our growth was going to come from redevelopment through infill. So infill is like either a lot that doesn't have anything on it, or it could be an underdeveloped lot, like maybe there's a house on it. and they used the factor of if it was an acre or greater with a house on it, then, or no, it was half acre or greater, then there was redevelopment potential. But they didn't factor in things like availability of utilities. They didn't factor in things like, could you actually build a house in the backyard of that place? Was there access to the right of way, things of that nature? So we were unsuccessful this last time around at being able to expand our urban growth area to provide what we feel is a necessary amount of land for development purposes to help reduce the cost burden of the housing inventory that's out there. Yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't know, Mike, if you had anything to add or if there were any questions. It's a really interesting document, and look forward to seeing how this all plays out in the long run.
The only thing I would add is due to the need for affordable housing, a study a community council conducted as well that demonstrated this. There is a regional effort toward establishing a regional land trust to help develop affordable housing. So that's going to be coming through, I would expect, in the next year or so to start acting as an affordable housing developer across the valley. So there's some work going on pertaining to that.
Does anybody have any questions or?
I have a question, John. Can I ask a question?
No staff questions, sorry. No, just kidding. Go ahead, Reed.
I know when my husband and I were looking at houses in Walla Walla County at the end of 2000, well, pretty much all of 2018, the city, if I remember correctly, the city of Walla Walla had passed an ordinance that restricted vacation rental homes. Do you know what we found is a lot of houses that were clearly vacation rental homes were on the market at that time. Do you know the impact that had on the housing market in Walla Walla, and if that's something the city's considering?
Well, they did adopt, they had a ban briefly, and then they adopted some zoning regulations that restricted it much more than it had before. They now require owner occupancy, so you can't just, as an investor, can't buy a single family home and then turn it into a vacation rental. You have to occupy, basically you have to have 2 units. You have to occupy one of them on the site, and then you can rent out like an accessory dwelling unit. So I think that's, it's probably helped out in Walla Walla a tad bit because they are not creating new conversions of single family units. We may have seen a little bit of an uptick in vacation rentals in College Place as a result of that. We're monitoring that. We have roughly somewhere between 30 and 35 vacation rentals in College Place, and it's been pretty steady. We've been monitoring it since it has become kind of a hot topic in Walla Walla. So I think one thing that really is going to be a significant factor is both Walla Walla has, they now allow up to 4 dwelling units in any zone, in any single family zone, which that'll be interesting. They also allow accessory dwelling units on every property. We also allow accessory dwelling units on every property. In fact, we just had a total rehaul of our zoning code that went into effect in January of this year. And in fact, I've issued permits for 3 new accessory dwelling units this year, which was exciting. I mean, I'm hoping for more, but still exciting to see those permits come in. But I think that's going to be a small game changer for the affordable housing factor, because they are smaller units. Usually they're under 600 square feet. So they're geared towards, young professionals. you know, people that only need one unit, one bedroom. The other thing that I'm interested to watch play out is how the neighborhoods evolve in Walla Walla, to see how they might be impacted by fourplexes developing throughout the community. And it's something that I'm going to definitely be talking with my planning commission about, because I think we have a similar, you know, if you look at our older core, the older parts of town, we do have that already, that mixed feel of where there are apartments and single family units, you know, right by each other, and they seem to coexist just fine. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in Walla Walla with newer units being developed.
Thank you.
I ramble sometimes, I apologize.
Are there any other questions folks may have?
Can I ask another one? I'll be quick. This is of John too. So in my neighborhood, we have, actually our neighbor, he has his daughter and son-in-law, and they basically now live in an RV on their property. And I could call and complain and they probably would kick them off, but I don't have a problem with it. They obviously need a place to live. And maybe this is something that we can report back. And Chief, if you know, if we've had that and complaints made in College Place, and if so, you know, what's the city doing in response to those?
So we have regulations on the books that don't allow you to live in an RV, or you know, these tiny homes are kind of popular. You've seen the DIY shows where you build your own cool little trailer, and many communities don't allow you to actually legally reside in these in your backyards. You can do it like inside of a manufactured home park. There's some parks that have some stalls where they lease out spaces for those types of units. And yes, we had, and Troy can probably speak to this, but we did have a resident that had bought a trailer. The owner of the property was actually living in the trailer, and her son was living in the house. And we got a complaint on it and had to respond. And so our code enforcement officer handled it, and we worked with the property owner, and she found another place that would accommodate her in her trailer. It's usually complaint driven, sort of. I mean, we don't drive around looking for these sort of things, but.
Thank you.
Any other zoning questions while you got your planner here?
Are we regulating, the city, you really, are you regulating the housing that Walla Walla University is buying up? Because I know that like a few years ago, they bought up quite a few different properties.
So we are aware of them buying properties outside of the university district. Up until recently, we actually didn't have a university district zone. So during the last comprehensive plan process in 2018, 2019, we actually established some boundaries for the university district. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't buy a property outside of their district. That just means that they couldn't convert it to, say, a dormitory, or, you know, so on and so forth, or for school purposes, maybe to build another academic building or something. They would have to go through a planning process to rezone those lands, and you know, a public process. So we're kind of trying to keep them within their boundaries. But you know, one of the difficult things is they are often left properties in wills. So, and a lot of times they will hang on to those for a few years and use them as backup student housing. And, you know, there's, you know, they comply with, you know, they make sure they don't have enough, they don't have more tenants in their units than what would be typical of a neighborhood, you know, residence. I think they try to keep them at 2 per bedroom, and comply with the parking regulations and things like that. But it's, you know, yeah, we're aware of it. I don't know that there's a lot we can do other than, you know, if they really want to develop the property for actual university purposes, for educational or dormitory, we would have to make them go through a process.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Anybody else?
I'm excited to hear that somebody's working on this, and it sounds like you've done a lot of research. So I just thank you for all you've done and continue to do, because I think this is a really important part of making it possible for other people to enjoy Walla Walla College Place like we do. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, affordable housing is, I mean, that's the key to a healthy community. I mean, I think that's housing first. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that, you know, a lot of the movements are for people that don't have housing, is to get people, before you even try to get them back into the housing, to the employment market, you got to get a shelter over their heads so they, you know, have a place to take care of themselves before they're ready to go back out there into the workforce.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Let's move on to our next item, administrative report from Chief Tamaris.
All right, guys. I think Lisa's going to give me the reins here so I can show you my screen.
It's all yours.
All right. Can you see that?
No, not yet. Click share screen at the bottom and then choose which application you want to share.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Wow. I promise I didn't.
If you make him a co-host, he should be able to do it.
Huh. I thought I had already done that, but apparently not so much. Now you should be able to.
Okay, great. All right, everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so bear with me. You'll notice we are doing No Shave November, so I got a fuzzy face. I look at my screenshot here, and it looks like my dad, which is a little depressing to me. But we're going to get started here. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is an organizational chart of the police department. We actually have 14 commissioned officers, including myself. We do have one vacancy, so very soon here we'll have a 15th officer. And one of the great things about having this diversity inclusion board is I was able to use one of the board members to help us in the screening and the interview process of these applicants. So Ruben, thank you very much for volunteering your time to be part of that. I think it is really important to have you a part of that. What did you think of that experience?
It was a great experience. I loved it. And it was great working with Sean and Lisa, Sergeant Parker. And so it was a long process, but it was good candidates, and excited to hear when we know, when will we find out?
That's a great question. So I'll be doing the, I have the top 3 candidates for the clerk position and also for the police officer position. I'll be doing the chief's interview starting next week. So we'll be able to find out here real quick. We should have someone hired before the end of the year, hopefully. All right, moving on here. So we have right now we have 18 employees, and we have a reserve officer as well. So we're in the other, the part-time clerk position. Actually, Brielle is a full-time records clerk, and she'll be moving to a part-time position. And she is expecting her first child and wants to be a stay-at-home mom as much as possible, but still come to work a little bit here. So we're excited for her to do that. So yeah, agency is growing. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of our mission, vision, values, and goals. We'll go over that, and then we'll kind of proceed through this fairly quickly. But please, at any time, if you have any questions, stop and ask. So the College Place Police Department embraces the philosophy of community-oriented policing and strives to enhance, I've got this, enhance the quality of life and safety of our citizens with the highest degree of ethical behavior, fairness, and professional conduct. Our vision is to ensure that the city of College Place is a safe place to live, work, and do business through the delivery of quality law enforcement services. Our values. Every member of the College Place Police Department is part of a team who inculcates courage, commitment, community, and character in their daily operations through open and honest cooperation, service, respect, and diversity. So I met with each one of you when I did your videos, and I gave you a copy of our coin, and on that coin, it has the courage, commitment, community, and character, and those are the values we live by. We have goals for the department. Goal 1 is to reduce crime and improve traffic safety within our community. Goal 2 is to provide quality services and innovative policing strategies delivered through excellent customer service.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is Caitlin. A lot of my questions are going to be definitions. So for goal 1,
you're breaking up just a little bit. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Goal 1, it says to reduce crime. What is crime defined as?
Misdemeanors, felonies.
So it'd be anything that the state or the city defines as criminal activity.
Okay. You have anything else, Kaylin?
We'll see if you get to it.
Okay. Goal 3 is to provide leadership and resources to attract, retain, and foster a safe, ethical, innovative, knowledgeable, and diverse workforce. And goal 4 is to work collaboratively with our stakeholders to improve the quality of life within our city. So we're really proud this year. We got our accreditation, and it's full accreditation through the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Association. This is the first time in our 75-year history of the police department to receive an accreditation. And it's important to know that when you receive your accreditation, these are outside agency professionals and subject matter experts from outside the area that come in and audit the department, interview employees, and conduct a thorough vetting of the department before you're awarded your accreditation. So pretty proud of that. So the purpose of a law enforcement agency accreditation is to professionalize the law enforcement industry by providing a review process for agencies to be certified as operating under industry best practices and standards. All right, so we're going to get into Mr. Rizzatello, our city administrator, asked me to discuss the 8 Can't Wait. So let's get into that. Number 1, ban chokeholds and strangleholds. So we do not use chokeholds or strangleholds. We do train our officers to use the vascular neck restraint. The VNR, or vascular neck restraint, does not restrict oxygen to the brain. It's a less lethal option for our officers when dealing with a combative individual. So chokeholds are carotid, they block airways. This does not do that. So this constricts blood flow. So that is a less lethal option for officers. And we've never had a use of force using the VNR method.
I have a question.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Donald. Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay. The VNR, I know that it is a less lethal, sorry, it's a less lethal. But so you're saying that you do train the officers. How often do they get training? And then I think I had a follow-up that I just forgot. Yeah, how often do they get training on certain those kinds of things?
So VNR requires refresher training every year.
Annually, okay.
Annually.
And then Donald?
yeah, I was just, it just sounds, it really, a stranglehold, when I think of a stranglehold, I think of like going forward and like holding the hands and strangling that way. Same with the chokehold, but how do you, I know I'm not in the training or have not seen this training, but what is the real difference? Where's the hold for a VNR? I'm not asking you to demonstrate, but I don't know. It seems kind of the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I will tell you that it looks very similar because you are still holding their neck. So, but it's vascular. So you're constricting blood flow of your vascular right here on the side of your neck. Can you see me right here where I'm pointing?
I can see. Yep.
Yeah.
Your carotid.
Yep.
So that's what you're doing. You're limiting the blood flow to the brain. And what that does is it makes you sleepy and eventually pass out. Carotid is choke. So you're pushing on the throat. We're not doing that. We're restricting, we're putting pressure on the side of the neck where you have your blood flow goes up to your brain. And we could probably at some point maybe get a couple people to come demonstrate that for the board if you would like that.
Oh, I remember my follow-up question. Is there legislation that you know of, either federally or state, that is moving towards the direction of getting rid of VNR?
Not that I've heard. Mike, have you heard anything? I know there's quite a few things in front of the state legislator next year. Have you heard anything?
I've heard that there's a couple of them. Yeah.
But nothing's settled.
No.
Okay.
No, right now in Olympia at the moment, per our lobbyists, there's around 200 different legislative bills floating around on that subject.
Wow. Okay. I think I had heard something about it, so that's why I was wondering. Thank you.
You bet.
Chief, if you could do me a favor as you continue to go through these, I would love an example of when, like I don't know when you would use a VNR, as opposed to using a taser or de-escalation or any of those kinds of things. So would that be possible?
Well, I can paint a little bit of a picture for you. Sure. So say for instance, you are fighting with someone who you're on the ground, you're fighting with someone, and that is not a lethal force situation. But suddenly the individual starts, as you're wrestling with him, he's starting to go for your weapon. All right. So you're in a position, you're already on the ground, you may have the opportunity to use the vascular neck restraint instead of having to use or go lethal. A taser would not be an option if you're wrestling with someone on the ground. It's just very difficult to pull out of your holster and have that control. So it's just really another tool in the toolbox, if that makes sense. And as I reported, we've never had a use of force with the VNR. It would be a very unique situation to have it. But it is another tool in the toolbox. Does that answer your question, Kaylin? Does that help a little bit, paint the picture?
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial for the next 7 of them for you to give a little brief idea of when you would use that thing, because there's a few different policies that you have, and so I think that for all that aren't
Are you asking me as I step through these you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So let's go on to number 2, require de-escalation. So college police officers are trained in de-escalation techniques. In fact, one of our officers, Dylan Schmick, is currently attending an instructor course and will begin presenting training to our officers in de-escalation in 2021. We already get de-escalation training, a lot of de-escalation training, but in compliance with I-940, we're going to begin receiving 40 hours of de-escalation training every 3 years. The state put this curriculum together, and this will be implemented beginning next year. So we'll have a whole bunch more. We're also required to complete annual crisis intervention training. So any questions from that?
Could you give an example of when you would use de-escalation?
We use de-escalation every day. You get to a house and someone's irate and upset with you. We begin to try to calm them down, try to maybe separate them from whatever's causing their excitedness or their anger. And you know, one of the big things we do to de-escalate is listening and be a good listener and listening what they're saying, because people usually in their anger and they're venting, they're talking, they're expressing their feelings, and to listen on exactly what it is that they want to tell us. So yeah, so that's one example.
Thank you.
Our officers are actually very good at what they do, and they de-escalate each and every day. Number 3, require warning shots before shooting. So we do have a policy that states in part a verbal warning should precede the use of deadly force where feasible, but we do not use warning shots. And the reason why we don't use warning shots is we have to be accountable for every round that comes out of our weapon. So if we were to do a warning shot and there was a ricochet or those types of things, we would be held accountable to that. So we do give verbal warnings prior to shooting. We are trained to do that.
Why is the language here should? A verbal warning should precede the use of deadly force. Not mandatory?
It's not. Well, so here's the deal. It's not, because Force Science, which is an organization that studies lethal encounters. So by the time an officer recognizes a lethal encounter and the time that they are able to draw their weapon and return fire is 2.2 seconds. So your body can act faster just by reputation and training than you can speak. So you may get your weapon out and have to fire that round because the person's pulling a gun on you at the same time. So you may not have time to, you know, I'm going to shoot. It's going to be boom, 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 in dealing with the threat. So does that answer that?
So it's the perceived threat then, because if it only takes however many seconds, there's really no way to guarantee that that person has a deadly weapon.
Well, so what are you asking me again?
So the language, it says it should proceed, and you said that it cannot always proceed because of how quickly officers have to respond to the deadly threats that could be coming. I guess my clarification is that it is really based on an officer's perception of an event or perception of what's happening, because they interact so quickly.
Yeah, so the reason why these policies are here, so every situation is not exactly the same. There's a lot of unknowns when you're involved in these types of situations. So, and these things play out really quick. So whenever possible, you should, proceed to use a verbal warning to precede the use of deadly force whenever possible. What I'm telling you is sometimes that's not possible.
So can I give an example?
Please.
Sure. So it's anecdotal, but I took a training on use of force. It's been over 10 years now. And we actually had guns that weren't loaded and not, you couldn't kill anyone. And we videoed ourselves, and I shot now he's an appellate court judge, but basically I had the gun pointing at him and there was a gun on the table. And they said, when he goes to grab that gun, shoot him. And I did it probably 4 times. And when you reviewed the tape, he always shot me first, because it took my brain that long to get me to pull the trigger that he shot me first. It doesn't seem like that should be the case, but that was absolutely the case every time. And then I shot him when I grabbed the gun, and he had the gun pointing at me, and he still couldn't shoot me in time. It's fascinating. You can go down the rabbit hole on this. There's lots of information online. That's all.
I can tell you this, the last thing law enforcement officers want to do is they have to take someone's life. That is the last thing we want to do. So we do spend a lot of time training on these types of things and these types of scenarios, but it's very difficult sometimes, and it's tough, but I appreciate that feedback. It's even in training, and what you were using was called the simunition, where they shoot like these wax bullets at you in training, and you learn a lot from those experiences.
And Chief, can you tell us, I mean, you've been in law enforcement how many years, and how many times you pulled your gun?
So this is my 30th year in law enforcement, and over my career, I've probably pulled my gun 15, 20 times. I've never had to pull a trigger, so thankfully. Okay.
Chief, can I just, there's more about, I guess, and again, we can go down this rabbit hole. What about more of instead of using deadly force and the target, is there more of a disable when we shoot? So can we shoot at a person's shoulder? Is something that has been talked about, or knee, or I'm not sure.
Yeah,
if
that's a great question, and we hear that quite a bit. So we're not shooting to kill, we're shooting to stop the threat. And if you've ever spent any time at the range, shooting someone's leg or arm as they're moving, that's you see that in Hollywood, but that's not realistic. So that's why we're trained to shoot center mass, so that we can stop the threat. But we certainly are not shooting to kill. And, you should also know that we're also trained to immediately render first aid on anybody that we're involved in a shooting with. And life safety is a huge part of that. Does that help, Coach?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to 4. Number 4 requires exhaust all alternatives before shooting. Absolutely. Officers are trained to exhaust all alternatives before shooting. That's the last thing we want to do. College police officers have less lethal tools such as taser, ASP baton, less lethal shotgun beanbag rounds, vascular neck restraint. And we just recently ordered a 40 millimeter less lethal impact munition for the supervisors. We also are trained to what we call personal weapons, our arms or hands, to try to combat and protect ourselves, and to get compliance from people and get control of people as well. So absolutely, that's the last thing we want to do. Number 5, duty to intervene. Yes, we have a policy to intervene or intercede. So our policy states in part, any officer present and observing another officer using force that is clearly beyond that which is objectively reasonable under the circumstances shall, in a position to do so, intercede to prevent the use of unreasonable force. Number 6, ban shooting at moving vehicles. We do not have a policy to ban shooting at moving vehicles. However, we do recognize and train that it is a last alternative. Our policy says shots fired at or from a moving vehicle is rarely effective. Officers should move out of the path of an approaching vehicle instead of discharging their firearm at the vehicle or any of its occupants. And officers should only discharge a firearm at a moving vehicle or its occupants when the officer reasonably believes there are no other reasonable means available to avert the threat of a vehicle, or if deadly force other than the vehicle is directed at the officer or others.
Chief, question, are the policies found in board docs, like the CPPD policies?
No, we have we contract with Lexipol, which a lot of agencies our size do. Our policies are updated quite frequently, but if there's ever a policy that you want to look at, I'm happy to provide that to you.
Okay. And then one of the things that I've learned in my time, I was on the chief of Walla Walla Police Department's advisory committee. I had to step down for just personal reasons in terms of my time and capacity. Was that a lot of the times the policies have to make their way through the police union. I don't know what they're called, but is that the same case here?
That is the same.
What
Yes.
What is it referred to? Okay.
Yeah, we have a police union. Yep. We do share our policies with them to make sure there aren't any changing work conditions that they have to bargain for.
Correct. And so a lot of times it's them kind of giving the blessing per se that is good to go for them.
So they don't get to write our policy, but if we change a policy that changes a working condition, for instance, we'll talk about body cameras here in just a minute. That is an example where we are going to implement body cameras, and we are negotiating that with the union.
And just the terminology is a collective bargaining unit, and we have collective bargaining agreements or CBAs.
Yes.
But people say union, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on that? I'll get on to number 7 here. Required use of force continuum. So a use of force continuum is not best practice. A continuum is often used to train new officers to help describe the continuum of force. So while you retired in 1991, that's when I began my career. And I remember when I was at the academy, they showed us a use of force continuum as a training model. The idea starts with an officer presence at the bottom and then increases with passive resistance, active resistance, and then assaultive and finally deadly force at the top. So the bottom is of the continuum is the officer's presence. The very, very top would be lethal force. Why is it no longer used? Because you can be confronted immediately with a lethal encounter upon contact. You not necessarily working through every single continuum on the continuum tree. You may go from presence to lethal force immediately within seconds. The College Place invests heavily in the training of our officers. And last year in 2019, we recorded nearly 5,000 hours of training. That's an average of over 300 hours per officer. So we far exceed the state's required 24 hours of ongoing training per officer per year. So all of these things that we're talking about, we discuss at length. And, we also often watch videos and play Monday morning quarterback. What would you have done in this situation, or why? And why is this bad, or why is this good? And these are all things that we look at very closely together as a group. Any questions?
So those hours of training, what are they? Firearms training, like what are those hours? How are they broken down roughly?
Yes, they are anywhere from firearms training to first aid training, to mental first aid, to de-escalation training, to crisis intervention training. There's a whole litany of different things. There's conferences we'll try to send people to if we can. So just a bunch of different training that we have each year. It could be DOI training, recertification training. It all adds up pretty quickly. Okay. All right, and then finally, number 8 is require comprehensive reporting. We do require comprehensive reporting. This is a requirement of our accreditation and best practice, and that is audited. Officers are required to notify a supervisor when force is used. If a detainee is injured, Officers are trained to provide first aid, call EMS, and or take to the hospital for examination. Officers are required to submit a detailed report. And then supervisors are required to conduct an investigation into the use of force and document within a use of force report. If there's any policy violations, we initiate an internal investigation. So use of force is closely monitored.
Troy, you might also want to mention the public records request we got and the response for discipline, officer discipline. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
We received a public records request for discipline, any discipline issued to law enforcement officers and kind of what it was. And if I remember correctly,
yes.
there were zero, there were investigations, complaints, investigations, quite a bit of reporting, but zero use of force that was a sustained finding of something wrong.
Thank you. Yes, the one I went across the state of Washington that King 5 was doing or something like that. Yes, absolutely.
And you went back years.
Yep. So since I've been here, we have thoroughly investigated all of our use of forces, and we haven't had any adverse findings for any of our use of forces by our officers. So an example of a use of force would be a taser deployment. Taking someone to the ground is a use of force. So if you're effecting an arrest and they start to resist you through active resistance or passive resistance, and the individual is taken to the ground, that's considered a use of force. So we document all of those.
Is there a state, I think you named it before, like I-90 or something that requires an outside?
So are you referring to I-940?
Or I-40 or something? There you go.
Yeah, so that's the de-escalation training?
No,
Yeah.
there was something where somebody outside of the agency has to do unbiased investigations. It's like a state policy, one of the WACs.
Yes, you're talking about outside agency investigations for lethal force. Yes, that's part of I-940, absolutely. So
okay.
We actually we are a member of the SIU, Special Investigative Unit, and so if one of my officers is involved in a lethal force, they will respond and investigate the shooting. So, and we also have local agency representatives that are community representatives rather, that will they will be privy to information, and will have a liaison to the family, and all of that is outlined in that as well. You are absolutely correct.
Okay.
Do you have a specific question to that, or just the fact that we have that in place?
Just the fact that I think that kind of adds to it in terms of comprehensive reporting. So saying that not only is it an internal investigation is conducted, but there's also a requirement that there's an additional, like you said, the SIU unit kind of helps with that.
Yes, they do. Thank you, Nadine. Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier about the body cameras. We are in the process of implementing body cameras next year. And a lot of people say, well, why don't more agencies use them? Well, I'll tell you why. It's going to cost us $200,000. It's very expensive. And a lot of cities and departments cannot afford that. We are fortunate enough by the support of our mayor and city administrator and our council to make this a priority for us. And I will also tell you, our officers are very excited about it. They welcome the body cameras. So I want you to know that. It's really important. Do you have any questions in reference to the body cameras?
What was the amount, the cost that you said?
It's going to be $200,000 for 5 years.
Okay. I put the comma in the wrong place.
Mike, Mr. Rizzatello, do you have anything? I'm sorry, I spoke over someone.
When are they on and recording?
Yeah, great question, Ree. So we are in the process of still kind of vetting out some of our procedures for all that. But typically, as soon as you get a call, you activate the camera. The camera will go back 30 seconds. And then when you're complete with the contact, then you can turn your camera off. So an example of that, they don't run 24/7. They don't work like that. They have to be activated. So an example is maybe you're doing a traffic stop. So you activate your camera, you make the traffic stop. As soon as you're done with the contact and you clear the contact, you would turn it off. If you get a call to a domestic violence, as soon as you get the call, you would activate your camera and you would not turn that off until you were completely done with that contact. So great question. One of the neat things, we are also updating our tasers along with this package because our tasers that we're currently using are no longer serviceable and they're no longer protected and covered by Axon. The new taser technology, as soon as you activate your taser, it automatically turns your camera on. So pretty neat to embrace that technology that way as well.
You mentioned that it was, you know, a priority of the city council. I don't know if you said city council, city administration, if that includes city council. Was that primarily where it started, or what was the initiative for the body cameras?
Actually, that was initiated by me and Mr. Rizzatello, our city administrator. We've got feedback from our officers actually wanting them. And, but we also want to be transparent. I know that through the concerns of social injustice and we like, hey, and people have cried out for, in fact, this summer at 4th and College, there was a group of college students chanting body cameras for police departments. Like, they're coming, we're getting body cameras. So we're happy to have them. And, but yes, we've wanted them sooner, but they're extremely expensive, very expensive pieces of equipment.
Right.
Mr. Rizzatello, anything? It's broken up.
I have a question. This is Kaylin. This might be more for Rhea though. English is hard. Is there legality that is being connected to the body cameras? For example, if I get pulled over and I feel like something wrong has happened, but the officer did not have his body camera on or her body camera on, what, as a citizen, what protections do I have?
That's a complicated question. I guess the short answer would be, as a citizen, you don't have any right to have your interaction with law enforcement be recorded. But I think that if you came to the chief and said, I had this interaction with Officer X and they did not turn on their camera, will you tell me if they should have? And if the chief looks at it or whomever and says, yes, they should have had it on, we've got a whole slew of problems there. So does that answer your question? I imagine that the policy will be, if someone asks an officer to turn the camera on, that they will. And perhaps the chief can speak to that.
Absolutely. So it'll be a requirement that they'll have a camera on anytime we have interactions with people. But we're also required to notify you that you're being recorded, so you'll know immediately that you're being recorded. The fact of the matter is, though, is most people are upset and they don't hear that. But absolutely. And if there was a situation where someone wasn't comfortable with, and they were concerned about whether the camera was on or not, we could clearly figure that out really quick by reviewing whether the camera was on or not.
And you can legally.
I think gonna answer it, but is the camera footage like document what's it called? Information and stuff?
Yeah, you're cutting out, Nadine. We can't hear you at all.
I think, Nadine, if you go ahead and turn off your video.
Public record.
Yeah, if you ask the question again with your video off, I know that seems to have worked for Kaylin.
Okay. Is footage considered public information?
I think she's asking, is the video public information?
So
Yes.
from what I understand, Lisa or Ree, yes, if you have a business need for the body cameras are a little bit different under the public disclosure law, but if you have a business need for the video footage, then yes, but it's unique. Not anybody can go get disclosure for body camera footage. Is that accurate, Lisa?
That is correct. There are specific requirements for requesting a body camera footage, and I don't have them off the top of my head, but more or less you pretty much have to be involved in the case in order to get it, and depending on your involvement in the case, it may be redacted to a certain extent as well.
Thank you.
And part of the reason for that is just the sheer volume of recordings. And if it were, if it was 5 years ago, I think it was, if you ask for all recordings, you get a copy of all recordings. And it's just logistically a nightmare. And this is off topic, but public records requests of governmental agencies have in the past crippled those agencies from even doing their job. And
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that literally, and I know I sound offensive because I've been working for the government for a long time, but literally there are individuals out there that make public records requests for no legitimate reason other than they want to catch the governmental agency not disclosing something and earn money. Fortunately, there's very few of those, but they're out there.
So Chief, is it safe to say as a blanket statement that you will be requiring your officers anytime they interact with the public to have their body cameras on?
That's the hope. We're negotiating that with the collective bargaining union. So, but yes, I mean, other than if you're at a public event or if you're just walking around and at the Walmart and someone says hi to you, that's not a requirement. But if the officer perceives that they are going to potentially have to take enforcement, then absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on body cameras? All right, let's get into the bias racial profiling report. So we have a definition here. Bias-based policing is described as the inappropriate reliance on characteristics such as race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, economic status, age, culture group, disability or affiliation with any non-criminal group as the basis for providing differing law enforcement services or enforcement. So there's an RCW that requires law enforcement agencies to conduct a audit of any biased enforcement or racial profiling. I actually go a step further than that to be transparent and actually publish a yearly report, which I think Lisa may have provided to you. And we'll get into all that data here as well. So each year we report to WASPC, Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, our data and they put together a report for the entire state. Racial profiling policies training, complaint review process. It's all in the RCW. We have to adopt a written policy, review practices, audits. We continue have training on racial profiling, and we work with minority groups to address issues of racial profiling, and then collect demographic data on traffic stops and analyze data. So bias-based policing. Our policy is the College Place Police Department is committed to providing law enforcement services to the community with due regard for the racial, cultural, or other differences of those served. It is the policy of this department to provide law enforcement services and to enforce the law equally, fairly, objectively, and without discrimination toward any individual or group. Some of our ongoing training in 2020, so far this year, officers have watched a 1-hour series of implicit bias for law enforcement videos by Dr. Bryant Marks. The 3 videos are myth-busting perceptions of Black males, bias by us, myth-busting, officer-involved shootings of African Americans, and police officers are and think alike. Those are the 3 videos. Those are also on YouTube. If you want to go look at them, you can.
Question. Sorry, this is Kaylin again.
Yep.
This is why I asked before if I can just interrupt as we're going or have a bucket list at the end.
Absolutely.
What did the you and the officers do to debrief after each of these videos?
So we haven't really debriefed it as a group. At times I do send out videos of, well, for instance, like the George Floyd video. I sent that out in advance and discussed, hey, we're at our next patrol meeting, we're going to discuss this in length. And then we did show it again as a group, and then we had conversation as a group, what that was, how that felt, and what that meant to us, and what our thoughts were about that. Things have been really complicated this year, Kaylin, because of COVID. So to get together as a group, and not only that, but it's rare to have everybody together in the same room, if that makes sense, because overtime and those types of things were involved.
And so, Chief, what was your conclusion on that video?
On which one, the George Floyd video?
Yes.
So, you know, we as a group talked about how that could happen and why that may have happened with the officer Chauvin's actions in his behavior. And it was because of poor organizational culture, which we do not have that here in College Place. We have strong organizational culture. We know how to treat others and how to behave, and that would never happen here. And if it did happen, I would personally be dealing with that immediately. But my commitment to you is that will not happen here. And everybody across the board, the entire department was upset from that. And look at the ramifications it's caused as a result across the country. Law enforcement in the state of Washington, for the most part, I would say we lead the way. Most of the policies that people are calling for in social injustice, we already have in place in the state of Washington, and we certainly do here in College Place.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So the supervisor's responsibilities are to monitor individuals under their command for any behavior that may conflict with the purpose of this policy. Last year, I sent both of my supervisors to a course on recognizing biased behavior in officers so that they have the proper training to recognize that. And let me tell you, we have a lot of informal discussion about these topics as well, Kaylin. So over coffee breaks, in the patrol room, when another police video comes out, we debrief those videos a lot. So I want you to know we do a lot of debriefing but I can't tell you that we did debriefing on these 3 videos. Is that fair?
No, that's totally fair. I was just wondering what the norm is for training.
Feedback I got on these videos, though, that they were pretty good. And they were. Actually, you've seen Dr. Mark's talk in person. Was it last year, maybe the year before, in Moses Lake? And he's very talented speaker, and he has a way of relating with the officers. He did a really good job. And Kayla, remember that conversation we had? We talked about the bias everybody has biases. We talked about the parable where the child is involved in a car accident, and the father was killed. They get to the hospital, and the doctor says, "I can't operate on this child. This is my son." And so it's the myth. It's like, wait a minute, is that the father? But I thought the father was killed because we have these biases. But the fact of the matter is, the mother was the surgeon. So I probably don't do that justice, but he brought that up. And it was kind of one of those, kind of one of those mind-blowing things. It was pretty good.
I was wondering if the officers or yourself have ever used implicit association test through Project Implicit through Harvard. The Harvard's it's a really eye-opening thing where you kind of like you answer these questions as fast as you can, and then it shows you that you have bias towards. Okay, yeah.
Yes, we've all had that. That's the one that flashes the pictures.
Yeah,
yeah, we've all done that.
Cool. And then a follow-up question is there other training in the future that you see? Is it ongoing training?
Absolutely. It's about having the opportunity to have them. So we're in the process of working on our training calendar for 2021, which has been difficult because very little has been published yet for next year because of COVID. So, but yes, anytime I have an opportunity to do implicit bias training, we jump on it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's get into some of our data. So last year, 2019, we get the data. I put this report together around March every year because the data is not complete until around that time because of cases and case files that haven't been closed out, or sometimes prosecution's not complete yet, those types of things. So in 2019, we issued 429 infractions. Those are like speeding tickets and seatbelt tickets and defective equipment, collisions, those types of things. Those are infractions. So as you see the breakdown here, so you can see I have 2017, 2018, and 2019 written down there. And you can see the breakdown of infractions issued by race. If anybody has any questions on that.
I was just curious as to why you do numbers versus percentage.
So because we're required to report on the numbers. We could certainly, it'd be very easy to break that down by percentage.
Yeah, because when I did some of the math, it did show some disparity. I think it was on the arrest though. Are you gonna turn to that one or no?
Well, yeah, we'll get there in a second here.
Perfect.
Chief DeRosa, I have a question about why the Oregon license is linked with a Hispanic Latino. I'm just trying to understand.
So Oregon tracks Hispanic Latino on their data, but Washington does not.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Just a side note, we did a community roundtable about 2 years ago, very close to when I started the center, and Hispanics, it was hard to get them to meet in College Place. They were just mentioned that they were busy or whatever, and when we drilled down to it, they were afraid to drive into College Place being Hispanic, and I thought that was an interesting interesting takeaway that we gathered, we finally ended up having the meeting at Sunbridge, and everybody was fine and all of that. But it was just heavy on my heart that was their feeling of College Place, that they couldn't come through or didn't feel safe driving through. So.
Well, David, I appreciate you sharing that with me. That's news to me. I work closely before the diversity board. I worked closely with Sergio Hernandez, and he has been wonderful to work with, and trying to partner with him to make sure that the Hispanic community feels safe, and those types of that's news to me. So I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, citations. So these are criminals. So this would be like suspended drivers, DUIs. These are criminal traffic citations. So this is all driving related. So traffic stops. Okay. So you can look at the data here. So Nadine, is this the graph or the area you were talking about?
It was the arrests.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question, Mike. Do you know when we're going to get the 2020 census data? Because that's something that we could really use to look at the figures.
Yeah, typically it should come out around the tail end of the first quarter of 2021.
And in the end here, I'll have data from 2016. So just to look at the demographics. Okay, so total arrests by race.
Yes, this is
so 596 criminal arrests were conducted through investigations by the College Place Police Department. This includes arrest warrants. So it may be a situation where you stop someone on a traffic stop for speeding, but then the driver has a warrant for the arrest.
Yes, this is the one I think I was looking at, was the proportion of the Black arrests has been increasing. And then when you do the numbers, instead of, if you don't use numbers and use percentage, I believe African-American Black make up 0.9% of College Place demographics, but they made up 4.3% of the arrests. If I did
so
my
this
numbers.
could be, so I don't have this broken down by what these arrests were. So these could be arrest warrants, could be theft cases. These could be a whole bunch of different things.
Chief, just to let you guys know, arrest warrants. So law enforcement officers can do an arrest if they witness the crime or they respond to the report of a crime in their investigation. They determine that a crime was committed. And that versus an arrest warrant might be somebody didn't show up to court in Pierce County and they issued an arrest warrant, or they were supposed to report to jail in Kennewick and they didn't, and the court there issues an arrest warrant. If that makes sense, just terminology.
That's helpful.
And something else to think about, Nadine, these 26 individuals that are arrested are highly likely not all College Place residents.
Yes, that's probably the truth.
All right. So just looking at this is the 2016 census that Nadine had mentioned, looking at the percentage of people, 0.9% for the African-American community. And then all the way down the line, 84% white, American Indian, Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific and others. Yeah. So hopefully in January or February, we'll have the 2020 census and we'll have an update. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a look to, for the demographics. Something else to consider too, this is our traffic data. So the city of College Place has 32 miles of roadway within 2.99 square miles. So a small city, a lot of roadway, but the annual vehicle miles recorded upon state routes in Walla Walla County are in 2018. So the total miles of state routes are 72, total miles driven recorded is over almost 300,000, 282,000. Annually, Walla Walla County has over 500,000 miles traveled. SR 12, west of SR 125 spur, daily traffic volume is 12,000 vehicles. So that's like Myra and Highway 12 right there. And then Myra and 125 has 20,000 daily vehicles. SR 125 in South College has 16,000 vehicles that pass through there each day, according to the Department of Transportation. So a lot of these people are coming, they're transient traffic stops, people that don't live in our area that we're making contacts with, that come through our city, that use our restaurants, fill up their gas, or visiting friends and family and those types of things. So I think we have a tendency to just focus on the residents in College Place, but the fact of the matter is a lot of the people we make contact with are outside the area. Even some of the people, and Real will tell you this, even some of the people that maybe you have a theft third, someone shoplifting at that Walmart, a lot of those people are from out of the area.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're from Milton Freewater, Oregon area. Sometimes they come over from Tri-Cities, those types of things. Any questions on that?
I don't have another question. This is Kaylin. I just want to thank you. I know that kind of being in the hot spot here with people picking at all of your policies and all the things you do is not easy. And I know that I can speak for most of us here, the ones at least I know personally. We really appreciate the work that you do and that your department does. And we are just hoping that we can make it better in some little way. But again, and I've told you this before, talking to people in other counties and other cities, I feel very honored to have our police department. So thank you for all of your guys' hard work.
Thanks, Kaylin. We're working really hard to be as transparent as possible. And yes, it's not easy.
Any questions or comments? No. Okay. I would like to thank you as well, Chief Tamaris, for taking the time to go through this and kind of see our answers. I'm sorry, answer some of the questions we may have.
Absolutely. Now I'm trying to figure out what happened to my. There we are.
If I had one more question, that I got approached by Anchor Community Initiative asking me to sign a letter, which I have not done, but interested in seeing. Have they submitted that to you? Have you? No. Okay. It was a request for collecting disaggregated data, and I was just curious what the policies are, or if we do that already, or if that's something that has been asked in the past. But
now that would come in the form of a public disclosure request, and to my knowledge, I have not seen that. Lisa, have you seen that?
I have not.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Let's see. We are in our closing items. If there's any other items that the board wishes to have for consideration, anything else that would like to be discussed for the good of the order? Thank you for hanging on for 2 hours. Meetings on Zoom are not always the easiest. Let's see is my audio okay now? Okay, perfect. I don't see any.
Really quickly, I just want to say being a lawyer and being a prosecutor can be a real downer. And so to be included in this group just makes my heart happy. And I really appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you as well, and for getting some of our folks interested and involved is always important to have that community lens to look through, just like you mentioned earlier. Any other items for the good of the order? Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Do I need a motion to adjourn, or can I adjourn it, Lisa?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, well, move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Caitlin?
Yes, it is.
Caitlin, seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed to adjourning? Anybody abstaining? Okay, we have adjourned the meeting at 6:40 p.m. Our next meeting is in which month, Lisa?
February.
February. So we will see everybody in February, and then just let us know if you have any questions. Thank you all.
Everyone.
Okay. Can you find the church now?
Good night. Bye.
Night, guys.